Putin's failures in Ukraine and Russia. This is what we're going to talk about today. And we will talk about two things, two countries, Ukraine and Russia. First part of the video will be about Ukraine and situation on the front and attacks on Ukrainian cities and the DniproHES dam, like as you can see in here, and so on. And also about Ukrainian needs in ammunition and weapons. And the second part of the video will be about Russia. And yes, I will talk about Russian citizens attacking Russian Federation, trying to remove the illegal man in power Putin. I'm talking about the Russian Legion of Freedom and so on. And also about the terrorist attack in Crocus City. Whatever is important to know about this. So let's go. Hello there, I'm Elena. Welcome back to my channel Enough of Propaganda. Please like, subscribe, share this video, write comments. Let's make the truth available for everyone. First of all, I want to express my deepest condolences to all the people who died and wounded and lost loved ones in all the Putin's aggressive wars in Ukraine for over 10 years of the war, in Chechnya, in Syria, in Africa, and many other places. Russia is a state of terrorist state, and this is one of the examples of it, attack on a dam in DniproHES, in the Zaporizhia region. And I feel sorry for the Russian people who died as well, for innocent civilians and children in Belgorod and Kursk region, which wasn't terrorist attack, it was Ukraine defending itself. And it was Russia who actually bombed Russian cities as well. It was Putin who did it. Putin brought the war into territory of one of my countries, Russia. And also, I condemn terrorism in every way, and I feel sorry for the people who died in the Crocus City and for their relatives. My deepest condolences. This is attack on Sevastopol. Over 20 explosions heard, and it sounded like it was attack on Belbek air base. But this is what we know at this moment so far. As a result of Ukraine attack on Sevastopol, according to this channel, which I can't pronounce, sorry, and geolocation and so on, several things were targeted, and actually Ukraine destroyed Black Sea Fleet Communication Center by storm shadows. According to Ukrainians, also Ukrainian Air Force successfully struck Yamal and Azov landing ships in Sevastopol. And also lots of other things, as I said, communication center and several infrastructure buildings. The war in Ukraine is going on. Ukraine is defending itself, and attacks on Crimea is a part of that defense. And it will gonna continue. Here is the Sevastopol. This is where it all was happening. Just now what I showed you. And let's look at the map again and talk about it for a little bit, because yes, Russia still keep attacking Ukraine. And Russian offensive stumbling, but it's not finished, because Russia keep attacking Ukraine. But Russia didn't achieve anything. Nothing important or serious is happening so far. Even Ukraine had to leave Avdiivka. Ukraine has to leave town which they defended for over 10 years. Why? It's because of lack of ammunition. And you're welcome to thank former American President Trump, his puppet Michael Johnson, and every MAGA Republican and every idiot Trump supporter you can only find. Because these people supporting Russian dictator whose intention is destroying of United States. And only an idiot could help Putin to do so if you are an American. But let's see what Russia achieves. Okay, let's take a ruler and see from... This is how far Russia moved. What? 13, sometimes 14 kilometers, depends in what place you're measuring. This is it. On the big scale, it's nothing. For 10 years, Russia couldn't take Avdiivka. Finally, they did. They didn't even close to Slavyansk-Kramatorsk, let alone to Kiev. They didn't achieve anything in Bakhmut either. Okay, they captured Bakhmut. How long ago? Where did they go? Nowhere. Because Ukraine is successfully defending itself, despite the lack of ammunition, despite of everything. So, there is no question about Ukraine losing the war or Russia winning anything. All Ukraine needs is more ammunition and weapons. This is it. Nothing is happening except for some important stuff happening right here. These gray areas, it's basically Russian people attacking Putin's regime, going to Russian Federation from the territory of Ukraine with arms, and according to them themselves, like Russian Free Legion or Russian Battalion of Siberia, and even apparently there is a little Chechen from Chechnya, from Ichkeria, battalion which is also fighting for their freedom. They walked into Russian territory again. And I'll talk about them a little bit more closely in the second part of the video when I'm gonna talk about Russia. But I want to show you this town, Kozinka. This town, Russia wiped out from the face of the earth by Russian bombs. Russia destroyed its own town. The first time in the whole war, in all the 10 years, Russian town get wiped out. By whom? By Russia. This is what Russia does. And there was no need for that whatsoever. Yeah, there was these guys there, insurgents, or I don't know how to call them properly, which was sitting in one, two, three houses, which any military operation of any civilized country would have done with simple military operation. Putin failed to do even that. That is why he had to destroy the whole town, village town, small town, wipe it off the face of the planet because he failed to defend Russian territory. These fights are going on Russian territory in Russia. Thanks to Vladimir Putin. I recommend the video of Arthur Rehi, if I pronounce his name right. He's from Estonia and they know history. They know history with Russia and everything. What he's talking about in his video, that in World War II, so many things were blamed on German army, destruction of the cities and stuff like that, which is in fact, many of that was destroyed by the USSR. Stalin, basically, and actually that dam, which was bombed today, like a few days ago, the DniproHES, Russia destroyed it. Soviet Union blew it up in attempt to drown the Germans. But I told you in one of my videos about this dam, it was a big construction in USSR, very famous. They blew it up. And they don't even know how many Russian people died in that. Russian soldiers, Soviet soldiers, not just Russians, Soviet soldiers died in that attack. While Germans were standing on the hill and looking in the binoculars what's happening. About 30,000, at least, of Russian Soviet soldiers died after blowing up this dam. Stalin called it the scorched earth policy. This is Russia did and USSR did in the World War II. They're doing it right now. And not just in Ukraine, in Russia. Russian town was wiped out exactly by Soviet scorched earth policy. There was no need for that. It was Putin's fear that it's spoiling his celebration of his fake victory in fake election. While Russia had a big concert in Moscow, Belgorod got bombed. Belgorod region in Russia. Not in Ukraine, not in occupied territories, in Russian Federation. So while Russian soldiers going in the mid-storms and dying in Ukraine and killing Ukrainians, Putin celebrating. They have parties in Russia. Big concerts for Putin. So Ukraine isn't losing on the front. No. Ukraine destroying successfully Russian Black Sea Fleet and Russian oil refineries. Somebody even playing bingo with this. And this is the old, like, this is March 17th, since that already several refineries get hit. On March 15 was already 15 refineries got hit. And now Ukraine is so precise, they're not only hitting just the oil storages, but refining those towers, which restoring them would take a long time. And 2 of these refineries, which already got hit, are in the cities where I used to live in the past. These are the recent hits. This is March 17th. This is Slavyansk and Kuban, all refinery in Krasnodar region, which also I used to live there. This is Samara region. Kuybышevskaya, Novokuybышevskaya refineries get hit. It's March 22nd posted. According to Deutsche Welle, in 2024, there have already been at least 9 similar attacks on Russian refineries. Because of them, gasoline prices in the Russian Federation increased and oil refining volumes decreased. And I reminded some of my new viewers, this is Ukraine trying to defend itself. This is what Russia does. This is called terrorism. This is from only March 22nd. Just one day of attack of Russia. A total of 63 Shahed-type UAVs were launched from Primorsko-Akhtarsky district. Total of 55 were claimed destroyed. So this is what Russia does. They on purpose target civilians. They target civilians building, apartment buildings. They trying to leave Ukraine without electricity and heat in winter and in spring and in any other time. This is what Russia does, and this is not war. Russia is losing the war, that's why they attacking civilians again. Russia's March 21st-27 attacks represent the largest strikes targeting Ukrainian energy infrastructure since the start of the full-scale invasion. This is the dam, the DniproHES dam I was talking about. According to the Institute of Study of War, Russia hopes to collapse Ukrainian energy grid amid air defense shortage. And yes, over million people city Kharkiv was sitting without electricity, and several other Ukrainian cities. Luckily, the dam still holds, but imagine what will happen if it will break. Russia already destroyed Novokakhovka Dam. It was a huge environmental disaster. Many people died, including Russian soldiers on the other side. But if you think for a second that Putin is care how many Russian soldiers in Ukraine will die because of blowing up this dam, you are very much mistaken. And then blowing up of Novokakhovka Dam, and I have videos about this, proving it again and again. Like Stalin didn't care how many people die, even Russian Soviet soldiers, after destroying this dam. Neither Putin does. This is just what Putin does. This is what Soviet Union did. This is exactly what Putin does. Luckily the dam holds, and there is, according to the Ukrainian energy officials, there is no immediate danger to the dam. Lucky Ukrainians that it didn't break. The Russian military targeted over 130 energy infrastructure facilities across Ukraine overnight on March 21st and 22nd in a massive drone and missile attack. The attack struck Ukraine's largest hydroelectric station, the Dnieper Hydroelectric Power Plant, DniproHES, and dozens of other facilities. According to Union, on the 22nd of March, Russian occupiers attacked Ukraine by combined strike by Shahed drones and missiles of different types. Russia shot 151 of these things, and Ukrainian air defense knocked down 92 of them. 55 of drones of Shahed and 35 of missiles, and 2 missiles X-59. Another important news about Ukraine is that Prosecutor General's office says that over 128,000 victims of war crimes recorded in Ukraine. And such as deliberate attack on civilians, attack on cultural sites or medical institutions, torture and deportation, and so on. And you're welcome to read this article. Also, as far as I know, United Nations just about ready or will soon release a report about Russian war crimes in Ukraine. Russia's terrorist attack on Ukraine again destroyed a lot of things. That is why Canada is helping Ukraine. And we are, as Canadian citizens, just recently signed at least a couple petitions to our government to provide Ukraine with ammunition, to provide Ukraine with the way to defend themselves. And this is Canadian Minister of Defense Blair announced $40 million Canadian dollars to provide Ukraine with artillery, ammunition, and so on. And on March 19th, our government said that they will take part in Czechia initiative to purchase large caliber ammunition rounds for Ukraine. And also Canada provides drones, night vision devices, and so on. And since February 2022, Canada has committed over $13.3 billion in funding to support Ukraine. And lots of other things. Our government in Canada doing what they can and listening to us Canadian citizens, because this is what we demanded. And our government doing what we told them to do. So watch and learn, Americans. Maybe it's time to say to your politicians and send them the pictures of destroyed Ukrainian buildings and killed Ukrainian people. Because the lack of ammunition and even lack of missiles for the Patriot systems, this is why many of these people died in Ukraine. After months of playing games with little Weasel Johnson, who isn't even the president of the United States, and holding hostages, not only United States, but Ukraine, Russian people, who also dying in Russia and in Ukraine, and many other countries in the world, by helping Russian dictator to kill Ukrainians. Ukraine need help. Please help Ukraine as much as you can. Now let's give you an update about Russia. As you know, Putin faked another time so-called elections, which is everything you need to know about elections in Russia you see just right now on the video. When people voting, military guys coming in, making sure you're voting for the right one. Besides killing political opponents and completely eliminating opposition, even toothless ones like journalist Duntsova or Nadezhdin, who was claiming to be not pro-war candidate and stuff like that, who was against war. And even after that, Putin still had to falsify the results of elections in many places. I just get information from analytics, election analytics, saying that in Shebekin and Belgorod region, which was bombed at the time, on 2 places like this for voting places, 100% of people came, and all 100% of them voted for Putin. This is all you need to know about Russian so-called elections. Putin is a usurper, and he was in the previous election wasn't real in Russia either. So anybody who is dealing with Russian state right now are dealing with illegal government, which Russian people did not elect. They should be stopped from doing that, and Putin should make known that he is not a legal president of Russian Federation, and no Russian authorities, like embassies or anything, they are not legal. Illegal Putin's regime fighting aggressive wars, and one of them is the war in Ukraine, which is going on for over 10 years thanks to Putin. And now that war spilled into the territory of Russian Federation. And I'm not just talking about shooting at refineries or something like that. This is Belgorod region was shelled, and 1 person was killed, 2 were injured, and Belgorod was also shelled. So this is what Putin brought to my country. He brought war. And he started war in absolutely innocent countries like Georgia, Ukraine, and Chechnya, which is want to be a country, but Russia squashed it. Syria and so on. This is what Putin does. These are shooting in Belgorod, in Russian Federation. Belgorod and Belgorod region. And children can't go to school, the classes cancelled and so on. Putin brought it to Russia for no reason whatsoever. Nobody attacked Russia. Nobody was planning to attack Russia. Nothing was happening until Putin started aggressive wars. And one of them in Ukraine. All of this is Putin's failures. He failed to be a president. He's not even a president, a legally elected one. For at least last 2 elections, if not more. More like that. But I mean, last 2 for sure. And this is Belgorod region, which is Kozinka town I was telling you about earlier. It's completely wiped out of the map by Russian bombing. This is what Russia does in their own territory, let alone terrorist attacks all over the world, especially in Ukraine. Putin failed in Ukraine, he failed in Russia, and this is what is happening. Putin failed to defend the borders of the Russian Federation because Russian citizens came with weapons from the territory of Ukraine and taking and holding already a couple weeks territories of Russian Federation in Belgorod region and Kursk region I showed on the map. These are Russian citizens, all that Russian Freedom Legion and Siberia Legion and so on. They are Russian citizens, don't believe anything otherwise. And they came because they don't have another legal ways to fight Putin's regime. Don't make it, let it happen in your country. While you have democracy, use it. For prevent tyrants and dictators to come to power. Otherwise, Russian future will be yours. But all of this is a fault of Vladimir Putin and his regime, and people who support him. This is why it happened, and this will continue to happen. If Putin doesn't like, people in Belgorod doesn't like to be shot at and shelled, they should stop the war in Ukraine, bring Russian troops home. Nobody gonna shoot at Russia after that. Russia attacked Ukraine. This is why Belgorod is getting shelled. And put two and two together, it's not that difficult, but many Russians don't do that. They still believe in evil something Ukrainians, Russia killing Ukrainians for 10 years. And last 2 years, extensively, bombing to the ground of the infrastructure, everything. That is why Belgorod getting shelled in Belgorod region, and it will continue to the other regions. It happens because Ukraine is defending itself. They want to survive. There are no other reasons. And more information about Russia. More failures of Putin. The attack on the Crocus City Hall, which is actually outside of the main downtown Moscow, but it is Moscow, the most cyber-secured city, cyber prison, I would say, of the world, where the cameras on every corner, and people get arrested in seconds after they put flowers to the monument, or Ukrainian monument, or monument of the people who died in Stalin's repressions, or Navalny grave. In seconds, they get arrested. And this is Moscow. The theater got attacked. And people died, and the fire destroyed the building and killed a lot of people. I won't show much of that, but I'll explain what happened. They are saying crawl forward and stuff like that. So this is what Putin brought, and it's not the first time happening. When theater got attacked, 4 people came by car and just walked in and started shooting people immediately, right away. And the guards of the city hall did nothing. They hid, partly because they only had batons and tasers, nothing they could do against Kalashnikovs. But of course, they reported to National Guard headquarters, which is about, they could walk to that Crocus City in about 30 minutes. They did not. They appeared on the scene about an hour and 17 or 18 minutes later. And after that, they didn't start storming it right away, which was absolutely no reason not to, because sometimes when hostage is taken and there is negotiations going on, there was no negotiations. They walked in and started shooting, first in the hall, then in the theater itself. This is what happened. And medical people, ambulances, and firefighters arrived. Nothing they could do, because the operation didn't even start. So for another hour, or total hour and a half, the FSB was lollygagging around, arresting and rounding up journalists who asking inconvenient questions, beat up some journalists. Meanwhile, in 20 minutes, terrorists were done and left, by the same car with the same license plates, and left. And meanwhile, the so-called siloviki and firefighters and ambulance was hanging around trying to do something from the outside. Stop the fire from the outside and this and that. Turned out to be a lot of people died, fire exits were closed. Russians apparently that stupid that they didn't learn anything from the fire in Winter Cherry Cafe when the fire exits were closed and people died. They did learn nothing. So terrorists just left. No problem. Nobody stopped them. Nothing happened. And they ended up going, for some reason, towards Ukraine. I guess what else they could do? They couldn't go to Belarus. They would be arrested. They couldn't stay in Russia. Or maybe they would have stayed in Russia. They still was about 100 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border. And now Putin is that pathetic that keep lying to Russian people and trying to use the human tragedy and death of dead people, which is 133 at this point in time, and a lot of injured. Many of them just died because they choked by the smoke and so on. So he's blaming Ukraine, blaming West, blaming everybody, and using the terrible human tragedy in his political gains. And what was the FSB doing, whose job is protect the country from terrorism? All the fine terrorists, all right. This is guy from city of Oryol, a teacher, Alexander Byshev, who wrote poetry in support of Ukraine, just like I do, only mine probably way more harsh. So he was recognized as a terrorist for poetry, and he received, this guy in the glasses, 7 years in jail. Some elderly woman, as I showed to you in my previous videos, 72 years old grandma, received years in jail for reposting 2 posts. Yeah, that's what FSB is good at, rounding up the grandmas on the streets. Meanwhile, Putler was hiding for 20 hours. He was waiting until the so-called terrorists would be conveniently arrested, so he could show up and say, oh yeah, we did everything what we could. How pathetic and how evil to use this in his political gains. Some of the Russians now saying, Russian politicians saying that, oh, we need to bring back the death penalty. Oh, we need to hit Ukraine. And they did. Well, they was doing it for 10 years, and mostly in the last 2 years. In the last few days, they did it extensively, hitting Ukraine, hitting civilians, hitting peaceful people. And nobody asking questions. Like, why FSB didn't prevent it? Putin was warned. And you know what he said? I'll show you in a second. On the FSB meeting 4 days ago, Putin is talking about that he received the warning from United States, from some other countries about that ISIS, who actually did take responsibility for this attack, which I'll tell you a bit later. Putin knew about it. And what he's saying?
Напомню и о недавних, прямо скажем, провокационных заявлениях ряда официальных западных структур о возможности терактов в России. Все это напоминает откровенный шантаж и намерение запугать, дестабилизировать наше общество.
He is saying that I will remind you about recent warnings from the foreign countries about potential terrorist attacks in Russia. This is a provocation, a blackmail, an attempt to threaten our society and destabilize our society. So he didn't take it seriously. His fault that he brought this war into Russia. He brought this terrorism into Russia. And since ISIS, or how they call it, the Islamic State, those terrorists took responsibility, they explained how it done, and even now published videos from the first hand, how they did it. Horrible video. It's proven fact. But Putin is still trying to blame Ukraine, try to blame the West now. Oh, apparently they didn't warn us enough. Oh, they did this and they did that. But the point is, Russia is behind it. They did it many times before. If somebody of you have benefit of a doubt, I don't have it anymore. I have dealt with Russia I lived there with Russia and USSR for a long time, and I have seen it before. This is what happened in the past. This post from Jürgen Naudet, if I pronounce his name right. Terrorist attacks in the Russian Federation during Putin's rule, the dictator of which is suspected of organizing. Ryazan Sugar, September 1999. I remember that very well. There was a series of explosions in different cities, and residential apartment buildings, huge apartment buildings were wiped out. In Buynaksk, in Moscow, in Volgodonsk. 307 people were killed, more than 100,700 were injured. I remember that the men who lived in my apartment building, they were making shifts and they're walking with the sticks around our building all night long, switching one another. So we didn't have that. And the Russian FSB got caught on it because people like our men find the bags of so-called sugar in the basement of their building. And when they find out it wasn't explosives, and FSB will say, it was a practice, it was exercise or something. We was checking out your readiness to protect your buildings or something like that. So they were caught. And after that explosions, Putin's rating increased and he wants the election in 2000. And another versions, it was trying to justify the war in Chechnya. Like Putin is now trying to justify and make for Russians war in Ukraine their personal war because terrorists killed a few of their relatives and it blamed on Ukraine. Oh, now let's go in the army and kill Ukrainians. This is the idea. Another tragedy was Nordost. It's also a theater. It was October 2002. Another building and another failure of FSB. Some woman from the street just walked in the building, which is supposed to be surrounded and guarded by the FSB and so on. About 40 so-called Chechen militias were in the building. More than 900 people were taken hostages. Actors, staff of the theater, and spectators, including children. 3 days later, Russian security decided to assault the building. Militants shot and poisoned 174 hostages to death with unknown gas when ambulance people didn't even know what gas used to help people. About 700 people were injured. And Chechens themselves didn't kill anybody. And it was also connected to the FSB and to Putin personally. And the journalist like Politkovskaya, I talked to you about her in my previous video. She was murdered after that because trying to report on that. Next terrorist attacks were in the subway. From 96 to 2017, 9 terrorist attacks in Russian metro. More than 130 people were killed, more than 500 people were injured. No, and this one, new one. And now the death toll is not 62, it's 133 people. And a lot of injured. So, this is whose fault is this? American sources, kind of like even CBS, said that US intelligence has confirmed that ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attack, but there is no reasons to doubt those claims. You can read this yourself. This is another article of ABC News on the matter. ISIS claims responsibility in deadly attack on Russia's Crocus City Hall. And now there are proofs of that. Like there are videos, there are their statements. In the beginning also, famous Bellingcat investigator Hristo Grozhev was saying the same thing about ISIS is behind it. But now we have proofs. These are the proofs. This piece from the channel of Michael Naki, but this is the original texts. When they're saying that they did it. And in general, there is a new video now, which they actually showing doing that. Meanwhile, even respectful journalists like Deutsche Welle News keep spreading Russian disinformation. That Russian President Vladimir Putin vowed to punish those behind Moscow concert hall attacks. Unbelievable. There are still people who believe that somebody else behind some sort of attacks other than Putin himself and the FSB of Russia. How it possible to get into a building like this in Moscow under all the cameras and surveillance when the little grandma will try to put a flower to the grave of Navalny, in seconds would appear police there and so on. And yet there are still people who believe that something is happening and nobody knows about it, and then they just sit down in the car and they just left and drive for hours on Russian highways with cameras everywhere. Which the picture of them in their car was published right away when it's all started. They knew who they were. They didn't even bother, the terrorists didn't even bother to switch the license plates. They was driving the same car with the same license plates. And this is not the end. The terrorist attacks on Russia has just begun. Right today, some woman in Domodedovo airport in Moscow reported that she boarded the plane and reported to the stewardess that she had a bomb in her suitcase. So, Putin stayed in power by terrorist attacks, and now it is happening again. I warned Russian people long ago about that may happen, even in previous mobilization. It didn't happen then, but it did happen now. And it will continue happening while Putin is in power. All these people who died is Putin's fault. And blood on his hands. This is an excellent picture done by our Canada site, Twitter. It said, "We will find out whose hands did it. We will find out who did it. Yeah, right, we will. Putin usurped power in my country by faking elections, killing oppositions, and so on. And he start killing Russians even before he start to kill Ukrainians. And he's a threat to the world and threat to Russia. And the sooner Russians will realize that their government is not only trying to kill them, it's killing them right now. While Putin in power, unfortunately, everything in terrorist attacks will only continue. So please help Ukraine. Please help Ukraine to stop Putin. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for coming. I hope you're safe. I hope you have electricity and water and everything, unlike my friends from Kharkiv, when over 1 million people city stayed without electricity thanks to Russian terrorist attacks. And many people dying there every day, and they were dying for all the 2 years of full-scale invasion in Kharkiv. And in many other places in Ukraine. Russia is a terrorist state. Putin is a terrorist. He must be stopped. Please learn the truth and stay informed. I wish you all the best. Stay safe. See you later.